Hello, this is James St. James, and in this episode we're going to be talking about the negative and positive aspects of the human body. Let's learn about the functional anatomy of the human body from a healer perspective so that we can reverse engineer intuitive healing so that we can re-engineer our body and mind to think and perform how we want. In biology, there's a very important concept called homeostasis, which essentially refers to a state of comfort that any living body attempts to maintain and regulate. You can think of it almost like life balance that the body naturally sustains through whatever an organism faces so that it can survive as comfortably as possible. There are many different factors that play into this balance on many different levels. One of the broadest characteristics that help establish this balance is polarity, which is specifically the balance between the positive and the negative aspects of something. By understanding the positive and negative characteristics of the body, we'll be able to facilitate and manage the balance it needs to function properly. Going even deeper, we can even learn about some of the individual factors under our control that play into this balance, allowing us to create more effective healing strategies for ourselves. The overall goal of this channel is to equip you with the information and tools necessary for you to take the initiative for your healing, or as I like to say, reconstructing your own body and mind. Hence why I bring up the idea of Human ReEngineering. Human ReEngineering, the name of the series, means that we are going to look at the body in a way that shows us how all things work and relate to each other so that we can make the necessary adjustments to restore physical, emotional, or mental functionality that we may have lost due to the stresses of everyday life. We can see many examples of what I mean by positive and negative in science. In chemistry, positive and negative charges are emitted from chemical reactions. In exercise science, there are positive and negative movements in muscle training, which refer to the types of muscle contraction and movement. These are just a few ways that polarity is expressed and how it shows up in our world. But in this episode, we are not going to talk about polarity in regards to chemistry and physics, but the overall patterns and systems in the body that correlate to the universal principle of femininity and masculinity, as these will help us start to see how these aspects manifest and create patterns, forms, and functions within the body. Once we see those patterns clearly, we can unlock the potential of the human biological system. The negative polarity represents the divine feminine aspects of our body that are typically associated with care, healing, nurturing, inward thinking, or transcendence. And the positive polarity represents the divine masculine aspects of our body, which relate to protection, outward use of power, survival, or physical stability. This terminology was originally documented in the ancient Chinese philosophy of Taoism, where they referred to these forces as Yin and Yang. Yin and Yang are the two fundamental energies that balance one another and permeate all things in the universe. Traditional Chinese medicine has been using Yin and Yang energies to categorize different patterns and functions of the body for medical evaluation and treatment. In traditional Chinese medicine, Yin and Yang correlate directly to the feminine and masculine characteristics I mentioned earlier, and negativity and positivity, respectively, are another way of describing these fundamental concepts. I may from time to time use the terms yin, yang, feminine, masculine, negative, positive synonymously throughout this series, but the pairs are interchangeable. This concept is exemplified in every element and pattern in the body. The overall purpose of this series is to provide knowledge and tools for healing the stress in your body, and a big part of doing that effectively requires us to see and understand patterns. The negative and positive, or polarity, helps us pattern and relate many of the complexities of the biological healing process so that we can take action. Along with the Trinity, or 3 viewpoints on the body that we covered previously, and the 6 elements we'll be covering in the next episode, polarity is also one of the 3 major concepts that we will need to fully grasp and to create the strategies and techniques that heal us and reverse stress, which is a major cause of most diseases. As humans, fixing ourselves is an undeniable urge. People try to fix themselves in many different ways, from changing their diets, going to the doctor, trying natural remedies, or even self-medicating. And this makes sense. We can all get behind that because we want to be healthy and feel good for everybody. However, depending on what people decide to do for themselves, there are risks, oversights, and shortcomings. We have to remember that the principle of balance and polarity are always at play in the human body, and our body is continually responding to our attempts at fixing ourselves, especially when we use chemicals such as drugs to alter our physiology. It's critical to be precise with how we change the balance of the body. One way of keeping that balance is to take stock of the positive, or yang, and negative, or yin, effects that our medications or drug choices have on us. Sometimes people will take two drugs at the same time, but one might create a negative charge, while the other drug might create a positive charge on the same organ. This can easily disrupt the metabolic functions of the organ and lead to a biochemical imbalance that can either cause permanent damage or even death. And unfortunately, there are tens of thousands of deaths or more every year due to the consumption of improper combination of chemicals. So by adding the distinction between the positive and negative types of chemicals and electrical organ outputs in our biological concept map, we'll better be able to make decisions in regards to our medication or even recreational drug use, because ultimately it's not the medicine or the drugs that we seek, but rather the peace in our minds and the vitality in our bodies. And those can only be achieved by medicating properly and keeping in mind the positive and negative changes of the organs created by consuming various drugs. Personally, I've had my own extensive history of fixing myself throughout my own life journey. As an extreme sports athlete fueled primarily by energy drinks and adrenaline, I always just forced myself to push through the pain of my injuries to perform my best, no matter what, in the next video or competition, which eventually led me to a dire need for healing. I have tried many different things in my own life in an attempt to heal myself, especially after years of pushing myself in action sports, going hard at parties, and even dealing with a 10-year spell of mental illness instigated by a surgery I had when I was 21 years old. Sometimes I would try something, a drug, a prescription, or a therapy, and it would help, but sometimes it could make things worse. Sadly, friends of mine have even lost their lives from improper drug use, both illicit and doctor recommended. So this is why I want to bring up this specific example. It's not only because the issue is so widespread and potentially catastrophic, but also because I have seen the devastation that improper drug use has caused firsthand. I've seen the highest and lowest moments in all situations, and with what I know now, I want to help you avoid the mistakes that I have made and seen. And this is why the information in this episode, or even the whole series, or the channel even in general, is really important to understand so that we can take the direction in life that leads us to where hopefully we want to go. At this point, hopefully it's clear that the negative and positive characteristics of the human body are important for our own healing journeys. Now, let's talk about the positive and negative aspects of the body, and some examples of where they show up, starting with the positive, masculine or yang energy. Positive. The positive aspect of the body represents things like protection, strength, outward focus, basic survival, and even giving to others. Different parts of the body are in fact either negative or positive, depending on where they are and what they do. First, let's discuss which sections of the body are positive in nature. Generally speaking, the entire backside of the body, as well as the shielding hard joint surfaces like the shoulders, knees, and elbows, are dominantly positive. You can see these protective parts of the body indicated on this diagram. You can see how the protective parts function. For example, if you were to feel scared, you might turn your back and lift up your shoulder towards the danger. Furthermore, the bottom half of the body, as well as the whole right side, are also positive. You might be asking, why is the right and not the left side positive? I actually don't know, but if you do, you can leave a comment and hopefully teach me something new. But for the bottom, the legs have to do with using our energy to move us, and the legs are the foundation of our survival. If we can't walk, then it's very difficult to survive. So this could be one likely reason why the bottom of our body is positive. And if you could think of another reason, mention it in the comments. As a side note, in these areas of the body that I'm describing as positive, every element in that section of the body is not only positive or negative, it's both. Sectioning the body this way is generally true for the overall being. Next, let's give examples of the positive aspects of each of the Trinity viewpoints we use on the body: the electrical, chemical, and mechanical. Let's start with an example from the chemical point of view. As you may remember from the last episode, this aspect of the body relates primarily to the organs and their functions. If you haven't yet seen episode 1 about the Trinity, then I would recommend checking that out as soon as you can. The positive organs of the body are generally associated with the digestion and storage. They include the stomach, bladder, gallbladder, large intestine, small intestine, and interstitium. One more point about the positive organs is that they are generally located in the abdomen or the bottom of the torso, whereas the negative organs are located in the chest, along with the thoracic spine, or in the upper torso. And this further fortifies the point of positivity being in the lower section of the body and negativity being in the upper section of the body. Next, when it comes to the electrical aspect of the body, the positive channels generally flow on the posterior and lateral sides of the body, meaning the back and the sides. Because these electrical channels generate emotions, some examples of the emotions generated from these positive channels are empathy, bravery, motivation, decisiveness, discernment, and certainty. It's not only the positive channels that have positive emotions, but in fact, the negative channels have positive emotions as well. The positive charged emotions associated with the negative electrical channels are generally found in the anterior and interior of the body, meaning the front and inner sides of the arms and legs. The positive emotions for the negative channels are consideration, respectfulness, fun, trust, joy, and love. These positive natured emotions are just an example of the way that positive or masculine energy is demonstrated electrically in the human body. Next, let's go over an example of how they are demonstrated mechanically in the body. Similarly to the electrical channels and the sections of the body's primary positive mechanical element, called sinew channels, are also placed in the posterior and lateral areas of the body. Real quick, the sinew channels are force-bearing strands of connective tissue that generally hold all things in the body together, such as muscles, tendons, organs, and bones, and we'll be covering sinew channels more in depth in later episodes. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them one by one, but here are the positive sinew channels for your reference. What I've given you so far is not every example of positive and negative in the body, but we covered examples from each of the three main viewpoints: the electrical, chemical, and mechanical. Now, let's briefly go over the negative aspects of the body. Negative. The negative, or feminine, aspect of the body represents things like nurturing, healing, inward focus, transcendence, and receptiveness. Most negative organs are responsible for maintaining the composition of the body, which is something that is done gradually and continuously. If any of the negative organs stop for even just a few minutes, except for the spleen, we would likely die. The negative organs are the spleen, kidneys, liver, lungs, heart, and pericardium. I also wanted to point out again that the negative organs are generally located in the negative part, or the upper part of the torso. When it comes to the electrical components of the body, the negative channels generally flow on the anterior and interior sides of the body, meaning the front and inside of the limbs. Some examples of emotions generated from the negative channels are introspection, gratitude, peacefulness, comfort, contentment, and intuitive understanding. Just like before, the positive channels also have negative charged emotions associated with them. These are care, pride or self-esteem, diligence, swagger or the feeling of being cool, curiosity or wonder, and acceptance. These negative charge emotions are just an example of the way that negative or feminine energy is demonstrated electrically in the human body. Next, let's go over an example of how the negative characteristics are demonstrated mechanically in the body. Similarly, the primary negative sinew channels are also placed in the anterior and interior areas of the body. Now, I'm not going to go through them one by one, but here are the negative sinew channels for your reference. It's important to outline the difference between negative and positive because when we are trying to find the root cause of damage in the body, we're first going to need to identify whether the damaged area or the psychological effect is positive or negative. From this, we can look at the corresponding organs, electrical channels, and sinew channels, then draw patterns between them based on the diagrams related to the healing process, so that we can get a more clear picture of how one aspect of the person, such as the mental or emotional, may be affected by the specific organ or part of the body. Based on the complex patterns of the body, sometimes a positive emotion will damage a negative part of the body. But if we don't know how to differentiate between the positive and negative, we may accidentally try to heal the negative part of the body when the positive part was the one that was damaged. Then we don't get the results that we're looking for. For this reason, the polarity of the specific tissue or damage we are identifying plays a big role in our overall ability to trace, damage, and create effective healing practices. This might sound complex and overwhelming at this point, as you're only on the second video in the series, but by learning these few key fundamentals, such as the positive and negative energies of the body, or the trinity of viewpoints from the last episode, or the 6 elements in the next episode, you will be able to build a clear mental model of the human body. And with that, we can create hopefully more accurate and efficient plans to correct the damage within us, or create therapy routines that heal ourselves, which is the ultimate goal. And just from a high school semester's worth of information, you will be able to take your health and the condition of your body and mind into your own hands. When we have control over our health and our well-being, then we have power to shape our body, our thinking, our personality, and by extension, our performance to any level, given enough proficiency and time. Now that we understand the positive and negative characteristics of the human body, let's look at the other aspects of the body that will create the foundation for all of our healing efforts, such as the 6 elements that we're going to cover in the next episode. I'll see you there. If you want to learn more about the body and mind, then feel free to check out the other videos in this channel or subscribe. And if you have a question about anything, then drop it in the comments and I'll do my best to answer it. I'll see you in the next video.